and welcome to CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Ravi Shankar. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for Denodo. I am with Juan Riojas with Rackspace Technology, and we're partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Juan, who is the CDO at Rackspace Technology. Juan, very nice to meet you.
Likewise, Ravi. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So Juan, let's start a little bit about your background for our viewers. Can you give a little bit about your current position as well as the previous positions?
Sure, absolutely. So my current position is I'm the Chief Data Officer for Rackspace Technologies, based out of San Antonio. I've been in this role now for 15 months, and it's been an amazing transformation in 15 months. In between, we had an IPO, which is absolutely brilliant to go through. Great experience. And if I can give you a little bit of background on my career, prior to coming to Rackspace, I set up the inaugural data office for Informatica, which was a fantastic experience to really get that exposure and just being able to be associated with that company. But prior to that, I would say my career is a tale of two stories, and it was shaped by one book for economics. My first half of my career was in supply chain planning. So I worked in logistics. I ended up working in supply chain planning and strategy for Dell. And in 2007, I read economics. It changed my world. I started looking at the world differently and getting more into the technical side, to where I went from Dell, working in analytics, to leading up and starting up the data analytics function at GoGo, which just recently got bought out by Intelsat.
Okay. All right. That's nice to hear. So for people like us in the technology space, we know what Rackspace Technology actually does. But for the other audience who do not know, can you please tell us what Rackspace does?
No, absolutely. I mean, so Rackspace, it's gone through quite a bit of a transition. Back in 2016, people knew us as a traditional managed hosting company. And now we've really transformed into a services company. And the services is our foundation. And our niche is we are the only or the top pure play multi-cloud provider in the world. Whereas we focus on modernization, applications, on data services, on security, on private cloud, public cloud. That's really the strength of where we're at. But really the name of the game, and I think that's where the industry is going, is all about multi-cloud. That's what Rackspace does.
Right. And talking about multi-cloud, I understand that Rackspace is the technology provider for the major public cloud providers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct. AWS, Azure, and Google.
That's correct.
Okay, awesome, great. So now let's come back to your role within Rackspace. So you are the CDO. Could you kind of tell our audience a little bit into what your roles and responsibilities are, what part of the organization you plug in? How do you kind of sit adjacent to like the CIOs? So can you give us some idea about that?
Sure. So in my organization, I report directly into the operations organization, directly into the COO. And I think that this is a fairly unique position, as it gives you an unbiased view to the organization. But more importantly, it sets you right in the linchpin of the business, where you serve as a change agent and a catalyst. In my role and my role and responsibilities, I think it's pretty simple. It's elevate data as a strategic asset. And as niche as it may sound, or as cliche as it may sound, that truly is my world, where I have all responsibilities that stem from the planning. We have a product function from planning to architecture to the engineering side to the data enablement. I don't call it data governance, more like a data enablement side. The BI, the science, and the business operators that work in creating this feedback loop process. So we cover all gamuts of data in the company. And as we look at the journey that at least I've seen internally, it's been an exciting journey to see how a company that was really data rich but inside poor has completely flipped the switch, and we are a very data driven company now.
Okay, that's great to hear. So I would like to kind of drill a little bit into that. You mentioned that Rackspace went public during your tenure over there, and building on its leadership position in the multi-cloud technology services. So could you tell us how Rackspace data strategy supported the success that you just talked about?
Oh, absolutely. I think at the beginning, even as you're going through the IPO readiness process, I think that one of the most fundamental pieces that you can have is just data. because you had to show projections. You had to be able to go and talk with resolute figures. You want to be able to go ahead and look at the insights. There was a lot of prep that had to happen ahead of this. And our team was, I would say, fairly instrumental, from understanding our characteristics of churn to understanding what our customers wanted, where they wanted it, how they wanted it, some of the feedback, positive and negative, even to as far as branding. We were involved in all facets of the business, whereas we weren't directly the catalyst, but we were supporting each and every lever that got us set up for the IPO readiness, what I would say.
Gotcha. Well, as you know, this year was the bad year for the pandemic, and a lot of businesses were affected by it. So, could you tell us a little bit about the challenges that Rackspace actually faced and how you guys kind of overcame with the data strategy that you had in place?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think if I look at COVID, which has really transformed everything, it's really accelerated. You talk about digital disruption and transformation. This really was a catalyst for it. At the beginning, there was a sense of anxiety, I would say, as our company went 99.5% remote from one day to another, which is a pretty phenomenal feat to go that and not lose a beat. But that now created, as we were looking at more of a short-term perspective, and we started seeing that the time started progressing, then in terms of a data strategy, this is where it starts getting concerning. Because now, you are working in a truly virtual and remote workforce, security and geographical location, and how the end users consume the information, those are aspects that are absolutely top of mind, because you're dealing with compliance and regulatory aspects. If you're going and working off of Europe and you're a VPN and you're consuming the data somehow, it certainly drives a concern. So I think those were some of the challenges that we were having to deal with. That, and at the same time, we were used to just working inside an office and working with the business to go and move forward. Our entire business model was set up on that day-to-day interaction. So by going virtual, we just had to change our processes. As an example, scaled agile. Scaled agile is something you would use collectively as a team, and you're working with multiple components, and typically you're in a war room. But now you're doing it virtually, and you're doing all these events and trying to plan and prioritize accordingly. So I think that it wasn't a challenge, but I think it was an opportunity for us to go and rethink our operating model. And fundamentally, we broke down all our processes. We looked at all our meetings. We streamlined everything that we need to make sure that we had the agility, that one, we had the mental breaks for everybody else, but then we had the ability to go and execute on the business. And I'm proud to say, as a result of that, we came out stronger. If I look at where I was last year to this year, quarter over quarter, our velocity for Agile improved 20%. Our on-time performance from last year to this year grew 10x. And more importantly, we made an impact. If I look at what we did with NPS, we were support to improve NPS by 10x of where it was. Our churn, we understood our customer characteristics, and we looked at our strong detractor comments to see how can we keep on accentuating this customer experience. Because through this pandemic, one of the things was very clear is you don't differentiate on novelty, you're really differentiating on customer experience. And anyway, in any company right now, whether they accept it or not, is a data company. So how you actually accentuate and differentiate yourself during this time is of utmost importance.
Right. And, I talked to Gartner quite a bit in my position. And one of the things that they were actually talking about is the concept of IT portfolio rationalization. So as you see, many of the companies, because of the economic shutdown, their budgets were impacted primarily because the revenue basically went down. So with the budgets cut down, with the staff cut down, many of the CIOs were calling into Gartner to find out what they should be doing because they need to spend the money keeping the lights on. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I think Gartner advised, and the movement is happening, which you might be seeing, is the transition from on-premises to the cloud, because you can shift your expenditure from a capital expenditure to an operational expenditure.
Absolutely.
So is that something that you concur, that you actually saw people kind of migrating to the cloud?
We did see that, and I can tell you internally, that's exactly what we did. Externally, we saw quite a bit of workload starting moving to the cloud. I think people started looking at seeing some of the benefits. At the beginning, I think there's a sense of, I think it's overwhelming for some companies at time when you look at what you have to do to go and modernize, to go into a cloud agnostic strategy, trying to choose the right vendor, how you want to go and deploy it, the process, the structure, the security. There's a lot of aspects that you have to deal with. And I saw that there was a lot of companies that started moving towards that. And I would see that will only accelerate as we look at in the next year or 18 months. Internally for us, I mean, this was something that we were planning to do anyway. And I think that scale and the scalability of cloud is unparalleled. If I look at what we did internally, we migrated an entire on-prem environment, 70 ODSs, 4 data warehouses, 1 data lake to one cloud provider. We did that in a period, in a relatively short amount of time with a high degree of complexity. Over petabyte of information, 10 years worth of history, no standards, no quality. So it was an absolute pleasure to go and work through that. And now we're starting to see the benefits of the cloud, not just on the harmonization and just the elasticity and what you have for flexibility, but it's taking really advantage of the next gen analytics that come with it.
Okay, all right, that's nice to hear. A cloud company leading with its own example of transitioning to the cloud. So, so for the people who are listening in, especially like CIOs or other CDOs, so was there a cost benefit part of the transition to the cloud?
Absolutely, there was. So at the beginning, and you talked about the IT portfolio. So we're fortunate that we're not in IT. We are a separate entity and it's unbiased, but there has to be some type of funding. One of the things I think that absolutely incredible was to see an executive leadership team quickly understand the situation we were in, on-prem, no standards, no quality, we couldn't scale. Projects would take, say, anywhere from 6 to 9 months, and now we're doing it in 1 to 2 weeks. But more importantly, they were so adamant about we need to fix the foundation and get it right. We broke everything down to bring it back up. And that had to come with a cost. But that cost, there was a lot of trade-offs that we did. One, insourcing some of the contractors. We talked about some of the financial treatments going from OpEx to CapEx. I mean, what you can actually put as to an add back, what you can actually capitalize as salary. But then we also looked at 2 key things, which is we want to improve the customer experience because that's what Rackspace is all about, the financial experience. And then we want to reduce churn. So if we do those 2 things right, we will position ourselves accordingly. And we created a portfolio. We call it a product function, but effectively work as business partners. They've created an entire portfolio that we share with our executive leadership team. We get alignment every quarter and we go execute around that. All that has, does it have a production impact? Does it have a quality impact? Does it have a cost impact? Is there a value gained? Because not necessarily does it have to be just cost. If there's a value that it's actually differentiating yourself from your customers, and that's also another monetization aspect that you can look at. Okay,
all right. That's very nice to hear. And I think many of the people who are listening in can probably take note of that. All right. So both of us are Informatica alumni. You were a CDO at Informatica just recently, and I worked there at Informatica as a vice president of product marketing a few years back. So how do you see the technologies like data virtualization complement ETL, data integration strategies, especially when it comes to multi-cloud?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, and you're starting to see a lot more. And the two are fairly different, but they are complementary. I think that you have aspects of virtualization really acting, data virtualization really acting like a source to augment your process. I think that's an interesting aspect. And really what I would say that is probably the more intriguing one is going to be the extension of the data warehouses. Being able to go ahead and consider that a virtual data warehouse, extending that with virtual sources. I think that is a true benefit, especially in a cloud agnostic strategy when you're looking at multi-cloud. I think those 2 tenets are enticing because it's not going to be one or the other. I think there's a way that they can complement each other if you can use the right trade-offs.
Right. Yeah, definitely they are complementary. Many of the companies, and you might be using as well, in terms of using the ETL to move the data in batches from the source systems into your data warehouse, things like that. But when it comes to kind of connecting to the multiple cloud providers, one of the things that you guys are known for is to lower the egress charges, which many of the customers actually feel the pain when they go to the major cloud providers. So data virtualization, we kind of talk about as an enabler to keep connecting to the data wherever it is without having to pull the data from one system and to move it out to another one.
What you're talking about, that cost aspect is absolutely key. by creating that virtual ecosystem right there, the data transferring, I mean, that you can quickly rack up a hefty bill as you're going through this. So I think that I think there's still a lot of work that's being done, but I'm starting to see more companies move towards this multi-cloud world, and you're starting to see some benefits. And I would argue that there's going to be a lot more applications being developed. They're going to help support this. I mean, you saw recently AWS started announcing that they're going to EKS everywhere, right? They're looking to expand it. So they're clearly seeing a sign of where multi-cloud is going.
Okay, all right, that's great to hear. So multi-cloud is the future. So now looking into, we're almost at the end of 2020. Now 2021 is starting. We're hoping for the better with the vaccine and coming out of this pandemic and the economic climate. So what are the strategies that you kind of see for Rackspace, especially when it comes to your part, which is involving the data?
So since we're fairly embedded into the business, I think there's a couple of things. One is 2021. My mantra is all about trust, and I think that everything you do around data is predicated upon trust. If you don't have trust in your data, then you're going to go into meetings talking about the data versus talking about the insights. So having the trust being that you have a secure, that you have the definition, that you have the quality, that the quality checks in place, that you have the privacy, you have the transparency. I know blockchain is having a big play within this realm. I think that's absolutely pivotal for me as an overarching strategy. But if I looked at it a little bit more operationally, there's some aspects that I certainly want to go in and support with. One is continuous improvement of cost optimization. By understanding our customer characteristics and their habits and performance aspects, there's things that we can do to help reduce churn by improving customer experience. I firmly believe by getting to our customers more and by tying in a more holistic view, a 360 view of that customer, you can certainly complement that. But then I want to stretch that can only be enabled with the trust. You think of MDM, customer hierarchy, product hierarchy, all those things are going to come into play. And then third to go and complement that is not just around the cost aspect, but also the growth. I mean, as a marketing practitioner, you can appreciate there's aspects of what you can do with lead scoring, opportunity scoring, and making sure that you can make that the front end process of generating and creating buzz and transforming that to clear and distinct opportunities. I think that's another lever that we're going to certainly focus on from our side internally for the company. And everything, and everything that we do, one of the aspects you try to do is also structure it so it can be scaled externally. So we try to complement what we do with our data services external offering.
Great. So one of the items that many of the CDOs confront is on the data governance side. So is that something that you're also kind of looking forward to 2021 in terms of how we are going to handle that?
Oh, absolutely. I think for me, 2020 was very foundational. We did some great things on migrating everything to the cloud. We deployed several ML models. We streamlined all our dashboards. We created an identity. And now it's really about that data enablement side. So it's not just about the data quality, but for me, once something that's so pristine, and you know this from your world in Informatica, is MDM, our customer hierarchy and product hierarchy. If you get that right, your account planning, your territory account assignments, share a wallet, upsell, cross-sell, those are so pivotal. I want to make sure that we can continue to complement that and expand it further, not just on making sure that we have pristine data, but then preventing it and doing the stewardship around that. That aspect, along with just creating overall compliance efforts, such as GDPR and CCPA, and certainly supporting that as we have a global remote workforce, I think is absolutely imperative. That's the focus for 2021.
All right, good. That's good to hear. All right, so we're coming to the end of our interview here. So just a final one in terms of your recommendation for our viewers. So what they should be thinking about other CDOs in terms of their data strategy for the future. I think
the more important thing is it's got to be business led. It's not about taking orders and not dealing with. I hear the word internal customers. Customers are always going to be right. It's internal partners. So being able to go and be a thought partner with everybody else and really transforming the CDO role, not just of somebody that's a technologist that can bring the data together and enable and support it, but really be that thought partner that really pushes and catalyzes to be a change agent. So the more you can get embedded with the business and true transformation efforts, I think that for me is absolutely pivotal to continue to compete on customer experience.
Okay, all right, great. So I really enjoyed our discussion. There are a lot of good learning for here for our viewers. So thank you, Juan, for joining me today.
Thank you, Rai, for having me. Really enjoyed it.
All right, and please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.